Welcome back to the Glassix Spotlight, where today we're venturing into the intersection of AI, customer experience, and content strategy with no other than Bonnie Chase. As the Senior Director of Service Product Marketing at Coveo, Bonnie has been instrumental in harnessing AI to enrich customer interactions and streamline service experiences. Her dual role as a co founder of Meaningful Content reveals her passion for empowering professionals through knowledge sharing and innovative content creation strategies. Bonnie's journey through various realms of product marketing and management showcases her comprehensive understanding of how technology can enhance content relevance and user engagement, driving meaningful digital transformations. Bonnie, it's fantastic to have you here today.
Hello, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to join you today.
It's our absolute pleasure. So, Bonnie, before we dive into the synergy between AI and content strategy, which I'm sure a lot of our listeners are eager to learn more about, are there any recent projects or insights from your work, or not even from your work, that you're eager to share or discuss with us today?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, one thing for sure is from a work perspective, I've been super excited about all of the things that are happening with Gen AI and the new things that we're able to do with that. From a personal perspective, I would say, we're into summer school now. I have two kids that are, transitioning into middle school and high school in the next year. So we're enjoying our summer before that kicks off.
Oh yeah, you should definitely enjoy the summer before that kicks off. Totally. Wow, a lot of things going on. Not talking about all the conferences and and everything else that.
Yeah.
Great. So, for listeners, today's episode called Bonnie Chase on enhancing AI-driven CX and B2B SaaS. Bonnie, as a senior director of service product marketing at Coveo, you've played a pivotal role in shaping product strategy. How do you ensure that AI functionalities within B2B SaaS products are aligned with customer experience enhancements?
Yeah, that's a great question. And, one of the things that I've noticed over time is that when new tech comes out, those early adopters, those innovators, leaders, those companies that are ready to get their hands on it, we often see these initiatives started top down, where someone in the executive suite sees the potential and promises of new technology and they're ready to jump in. I've seen this with chatbots. I mentioned Gen AI. We're seeing this with Gen AI as well. But the key thing is that, one, it needs to be aligned with expectations. When we saw with ChatGPT, generative AI was accessible to the masses. So this was a big turning point for companies because as consumers get used to an experience, they expect to have that same type of experience with you. So, I can get answers generated for me through ChatGPT. Why can't I get that same experience from you and learning about your products? So, that's one of the key things is aligning with customer expectations. So, that's one of the things that these companies are doing. They're seeing this new technology, they're ready to jump in, but what are those customer expectations? They want an experience that's personalized. They want something that's prescriptive to them. It's relevant to them. It's trusted. It's accurate. So going beyond just the technology itself, really looking at how people are interacting with it, the experience that it's creating for them, and ensuring that it meets those expectations. The second thing I would say is, this really needs to be aligned with, business outcomes. If it's not meeting specific outcomes, then you're putting in a lot of money, and you're not going to get that ROI in return. So it's really thinking about, okay, there's this new AI functionality, but what are you trying to achieve with it? What kind of impact do you think this can make? And then testing and trying that and proving it out. So for me, when I think about AI functionalities and aligning with those customer experience enhancements, it's really, down to making sure that it's meeting those customer expectations and then it's also aligning with your own business outcomes.
I love your thoughts about that, and I have to say that first of all, I think it all starts with a decision maker. I really think that it
Mhm.
matters a lot who's the person who's going to bring in this new technology. And you really touched a nerve there with the AI chatbot, because that's exactly what we do here at Glassix. Yeah, so we launched our conversational AI suite on May last year, so it's been around for a year now. We serve nearly 1,000 companies worldwide. Some are enterprises, some are mid-size, and the majority are small businesses. Our main goal is to really bring in the technology that was once used only by large enterprises to small
Hmm.
businesses, and kind of democratize access to conversational AI. So with that, I just say that it really depends on who's bringing in the AI chatbot technology and how well they understand the sacrifices and the resources that requires. Because everyone today, and I'm sure you can totally agree with that. And if you're nodding right now, I'll be more than happy. But I think that we can all agree that a lot of companies, just like everyone wants to have AI, and everyone wants to have AI streamlining their processes and making them more cost effective and all that things. But a lot of companies just don't understand that AI still requires training and maintenance and resources and a team for it, um,
Hmm.
at least to do it on the best way possible.
Yeah, there's no silver bullet. It's even these tech companies that promise the world, there's still some lift behind it.
Yeah. So during your career, you've transitioned from technical writing to product marketing management, and some would say it's these roles are kind of similar. I know they're not. How have these varied roles influenced your approach to understanding and meeting the needs of your users? What is this like? If
Yeah.
there is like one big thing, or even a few that you can take and say, well, this has totally changed the needs of the users.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I would say I've been super lucky to be able to be a part of this kind of end-to-end product life cycle. So from being a technical writer, working with the product team and engineering to really understand how the product works and how people can use it, to going into product management and actually working on building those products, and then now in product marketing where I'm taking those products to market. And ultimately, I would say one of the things that these different roles have in common, and one of the things that I really enjoy about what I do, is the fact that this all revolves around information sharing. So how can I make sure that I'm helping my audience, whether they are product users, buyers, customers, how can I help them understand things better, raise their expertise, or make informed decisions? And as much as I focus on the product and understanding it, the truth is it's not really about the product, right? It's about the benefits that people are getting from using it. So I've always had a people first mindset. No matter what role that I'm in, it's making sure that they have all the information that they need to do that next step, to make that next decision, to make the most of of the product. Because at the end of the day, they're only using the product because they're trying to do something else, right? So you're not using a search because you want to search, you're using a search because you want to find an answer to help you take that next step. So for me, really thinking about the people and what they're trying to accomplish. And again, the role doesn't really matter, between those, if I'm focused on the user or that person.
Right. And in terms of like um, cross departmental efforts, what are the type
Hmm.
of efforts you guys are doing at Coveo right now? I mean, you're obviously in charge of the product marketing and then the content and everything that spans the user's journey, and I guess a lot of it also the experience. But how do you guys work cross departmental? If there is like an example that you think is
Yeah,
relevant to share.
that's a great question. And we still see, or I still see, a lot of silos in different companies. But I've been lucky at Coveo where I've been able to kind of break through some of those silos and really get a cross-functional group of people working together. And I would say, from a just as an example, we're coming out with, or we have a generative answering solution, and over the next year or two, we're going to continue developing and continue improving and making it better. And so rather than just focusing on creating content for the buyer, I'm collaborating with our training and education team. I'm collaborating with our technical enablement team, with our customer marketing team, with our sales team. And it's really about understanding where that person is in their journey and making sure that they have everything they need at each step in their journey. So when we look at, prospects or new business coming in, they aren't as familiar with Coveo. They may need a little bit more information around who we are, what we do, how we can solve their problems, versus somebody who's been a Coveo customer for years. They may want deeper dive technical information. So my objective really is to make sure that we are covering all areas of that journey, and it's not me delivering at every stage, but ensuring that the message that does get delivered is what needs to happen at that stage in that journey.
Love that. And in terms of like, your role and everything that you do on the day to day, and from an ROI perspective, do you prefer them to be an early adopters, or do you prefer them to already be like users of a different platform that just, want to check you guys out? What do you
That's a
think is
great question. I will say it's I like creating content for existing customers, because those customers that end up using your product, they know the product better than the people who
the
build it, basically. And so they come up with ideas, they come up with like, hey, how do I do this? Or I'm trying to achieve this, how can I make the product do this? And for me, it's fun to be able to see what ideas people come up with around the product, and ways that they're really pushing the limits. On the other end, from a new business perspective, it is fun to get people signed up and excited about the product. But again, it's more, I enjoy really digging into the weeds and seeing how we can solve problems. So that's why I have an affinity for the customer side.
Yeah, that's amazing. And with your involvement in meaningful content, you obviously explore successful content strategies across different disciplines. What are some universal principles you found that can empower content professionals to create more engaging and effective material?
Yeah. Well, one of the things that really stood out to me when I was doing this podcast is storytelling. So, storytelling has been around, it's nothing new, but it's really starting to become more of a skill that's applied beyond, creative writing. So, from a product marketing perspective, for an example, I do a lot of storytelling with how our customers are using the product. But storytelling is also important outside of those areas as well. So, let's take technical writing for an example. We When I was a tech writer, a lot of the times it's really focused on a specific task and how you accomplish this task. But if you take a step back to think about the storytelling side of it, what are these people trying to do and how is this helping them achieve that? It helps you consider additional types of content that may be needed to be created to help support them in that journey. So that storytelling aspect, if I'm applying that to technical writing, it's about how do you add more context? How do you bring more to that user beyond just that specific task so that they know how that relates to other things? So storytelling is one of those things. Another thing is audience. I mean, this is this will be writing 101, but knowing your target audience, that doesn't change across disciplines. Whether No matter what your discipline is, if you're creating content, it needs to be targeted to that specific audience and what they're looking for. So from a technical perspective, you may want to get deeper in the weeds. I mentioned existing customers may have more questions or demands or whatever that may be versus somebody who's new. So really understanding that audience, and then being adaptable. So everyone may have a different workflow. Everyone may have a different objective. But at the end of the day, you're all aligned to a higher objective. So, how can you work together to ensure that that higher objective gets achieved? So, really being adaptable to those different workflows, and really understanding what's in it for me, not just for yourself, but for those other teams, so that you're adding benefit to those other teams, as much as they're adding benefit for you and your content.
Totally. I'm just curious to know, how do you like do the A/B testing? How do you tap into your users' minds in terms of like tapping into your user's mind? But I mean, how do you like
Yeah.
understand, okay, that's working, that's obviously working. We see great returns, but we can do it better, you know?
Yeah.
So I mean, my question is like, because you obviously have so much experience. I mean, how do you know how to enhance the experience, and still to resonate and still to make sense to your users? I think that's
Yeah, that's a good question, and it's in a few different ways. So, one, I'm a very data-driven person. So, anywhere where I can get points of data. So, if I do a webinar and I get feedback on that webinar, usually there's a survey at the end of the webinar. We get feedback, what resonates, what doesn't resonate. Um, if we might be missing or if we might be hitting it right on target. I also, I listen in on customer calls. So, obviously I can't be on every single customer call, but we use a product that helps us kind of track those calls, and I can listen to a recording and listen in, if they're talking about a particular topic. So, if I were to take a step back and say, I want to make an improvement to the messaging around this one particular topic, then I might go into that tool and see, which of our customers are talking about this topic. What are they saying about it? And just as an example,
I
one of
love
the
I love Gong as well.
yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. And just as an example, we had a generative AI kind of call, but the call was really talking about our connectors. So at Coveo, we have dozens of connectors. I can't even remember how many. But the thing with us is we've had these connectors since we've started, right? So Coveo's been around for over a decade in AI, and one of the core strengths of our platform is our ability to connect to any enterprise-wide system. And those connectors are robust, right? And we're seeing a lot of companies come out with connectors now, but this has been such a standard for us from the beginning that we didn't really talk about connectors a lot or emphasize that fact, because for us it was so table stakes. But then we started seeing people talking about these connectors more, and I went into our tool and I looked it up and heard what people are saying, and I didn't realize how much of a differentiator this was, because we had customers who, were using our solution, were testing out other solutions, and they were like, "This, there's no comparison. The ease of use and robustness of this, like we can't get this anywhere else." And so, hearing it from the customer is so different than just saying it yourself, right? Like I can say that to my team all day long, but until a customer says it, that's when it means something. So now I'm like, okay, this isn't just us, patting ourselves on the back. This is what our customers truly believe. So let's lean in on this. Let's see what else, others are saying. How can we emphasize this a little bit more? So that's just one example, but really listening to those recordings and hearing what people say, voice of the customer, is really good. And I do want
Really?
to add, sorry, yeah, I wanted to add something, in thinking about gathering this voice of the customer. One of the things that I've started doing, and this is because of there's a copywriter at Coveo, her name is Lori, and she does this thing where when she goes in and writes content or edits content or whatever it is, she'll tag where she got a message, like, I put this in here because customer X said this on this call. So I've started doing that. And what's helpful about doing that is, one, you're validating your message and saying, yes, this message is relevant and right, and it's something we should be pushing because, one, our customers are saying it, it's coming from the voice of the customer. So that gives you more credibility when you put out, whether it's a web page or a blog post or an ebook, whatever that is. If you're leaning on voice of the customer, it gives you validation, and it takes away opinion, because opinions can really get in the way of good writing. And that's why I like to lean in on the data and the voice of the customer.
These are brilliant points, and there's no doubt that you should always listen to your customers. I'm just wondering, in terms of like the scale, I mean, do you just need one big customers to say X and then you might be adapting accordingly, or you're probably gathering multiple of the same and then you adapt accordingly? What would you
Yeah,
say?
so I start with a hypothesis.
Mhm.
So I say, just based on what I'm seeing in the market, just based on the conversations that are happening, when I go to conferences or when I'm talking with customers, I develop a hypothesis and say, I think, this topic is something that we should emphasize more. So once I have my hypothesis, then I go in and validate it. If I have one customer, that's a good signal, but it's not quite enough, right? One customer may be enough to do more testing, but not enough to say, yes, this is the right path. So at that point, if I have one customer that says something, I can go in and validate with additional customers, try to find similarities, maybe find other customers who might be saying the same thing. Um, or we can go ahead and test right then and there. So, there's quick ways of doing A/B testing, especially if you have a digital strategy. So sometimes if we want to test a message quickly, we'll put up a message on an ad, or we'll put up a message on a web page that's part of a campaign, and see how it resonates. And we do that A/B testing to validate those words that we're using. So it kind of goes in this funnel from, one, the hypothesis of what the message should be, two, testing the message and testing the words, and three, refining based on, what you're seeing. And I'll give you another example. We started talking a lot about outcomes because, like I said in the beginning, you need to be able to tie the technology to outcomes. Otherwise, you're not going to get your ROI. And so we did some A/B testing with our messaging on these outcomes, and we found that when we shared those outcomes, we had, I would say, I think it was like 110% more conversions on the page because we
Wow.
talked about outcomes. So again, it's really looking at, okay, one, the hypothesis is, I think we should start talking about outcomes. People are talking about this in the market. Two, we have customers who are getting really good outcomes. Three, let's test how we message that in the market and see what kind of data and conversions we get, and then refine from there.
I love that workflow. It's a wonderful workflow. Now let's talk about Coveo Relevance 360 for, well, you know it, I know it. Not sure our listeners know it, but I'm sure they will right now. So it aims to revolutionize how businesses interact with content. Could you like discuss the impact of this platform on business outcomes and customer satisfaction?
Yeah, yeah. So Coveo Relevance 360 started really during 2020. So right during the pandemic, we used to have what was a customer event called Coveo Interact. But with the pandemic, that shut down, not shut down, but we paused that and we shifted to this digital model. But rather than just repeating the exact same event on a digital version, we revamped it to be something that could really be watched by anyone, could really resonate with anyone, could be a way for other leaders, other tech leaders to keep a pulse of what's happening with each other, and kind of share some of those learnings and also share about what Coveo is doing. So it's been a really great program for us. We have been able to have speakers from, you know, Bazoma St. John from Netflix. We had Salesforce join us. We had someone from OpenAI. We had Forrester, Gartner's. We had, C suites from enterprise companies. So really, really good speakers to really share thought leadership about the industry and how it's changing and how we really should be thinking about delivering these customer experiences in the future. Um, so for us, it's been a really good platform to keep that conversation going, and while also sharing some of the cool things that we've got in the works.
Yeah. And you've also managed global knowledge and analytics at MindTouch, focusing on
Hmm.
integrating it with Salesforce. What are some challenges and rewards of creating systems that provide seamless customer self-service experiences? I mean, I'm sure there were like a lot of different challenges and some rewards, right? um,
Yeah.
Working in this realm. Anything?
Yeah. I would say, one of the big things that when you're building systems is, are we going to build, buy, or partner? And that's something that every tech company is going to be evaluating as they're building things out. But as we think through what we were building at MindTouch, there was this global knowledge management platform. We had analytics tied to the content, and this was really to ensure that people had a way of creating content in their flow of work. And it was key for us to partner and build and integrate with Salesforce, because that's where the users were. So again, when we go back to thinking about that customer, thinking about that end user and what they're trying to achieve, it doesn't matter how fancy and amazing and feature heavy the product is if it's not going to be where they're working. So, when we integrated with Salesforce at MindTouch, it was really to ensure that those support agents who are creating content didn't have to leave Salesforce, but they had an easier way of managing and delivering it in a way that was also KCS verified, which is the methodology that's used in support knowledge creation.
Hmm,
So, um, so some of the challenges, obviously trying to understand how another system works. You have to fit within their technology, within their ecosystem. But the reward is, you get to partner and integrate with a really cool product. It's that a ton of people use. Salesforce, obviously is one of the most used CRMs. So that was rewarding as well, just seeing it all come together and seeing how you can take something that exists and make it a little bit better to make people's lives easier.
totally. And I think that Salesforce is a pivotal tool, is a crucial tool for every organization. Less for the small companies, more for the mid-size and enterprises.
Hmm.
Totally. I am a certified Salesforce myself.
Oh.
Yeah, so I have a lot of background in marketing ops. I literally wear different hats in marketing for over a decade. And that's why I really wanted to do this episode with you, because you have a lot of you also shared and managed to wear different hats within
Mhm.
marketing. Yeah, that's amazing. Let's talk about the meaningful content mixer. Is
Yeah.
this podcast is still on, or you're like, um,
So we're on a bit of a hiatus right now, determining next steps. We do have some episodes that we haven't released yet. But this podcast was a fun endeavor with me and a friend of mine, Sarah Feldman. We actually used to work together at Mind Touch, and then during the pandemic, we both got new jobs. Wanted a way to stay in touch, and also we have a shared passion in content. So that's kind of what kicked this off, and part of what led to this was we both have different backgrounds in content creation. We're both interested in how people are sharing knowledge, and so that was really the catalyst for why we did this. Um, and it was such a great thing to do because our goal was really to find people that weren't in our space. So we had somebody, we had somebody from Nike, we had a university professor, we had we had an episode where we talked about gaming content and the storytelling there. So a lot of really unique perspectives around content creation. But again, it doesn't matter the type of content that you're creating. I think the people who are creating that content all have a passion for knowledge and information sharing. And I think that's something that gets so overlooked today. We're so, focused on our jobs and our day-to-days and doing the things that we need to do, but it's really that knowledge sharing and that storytelling that really keeps the community and the culture going.
definitely, I can tell you from one podcaster to another, it ain't walk in the park.
No. Oh yeah, that's one thing, I it is a lot of work.
Yeah, I
to
actually I was a guest last week in a podcast talking about SEO strategies and how these enhance customer experience. Very interesting topic, close to my heart. Um, and one of the questions I was asked was, what's one surprising lessons from your podcasting experience influenced your professional practices? So I decided that I'm going to ask you the same question. um,
Mm.
so if you think there is like one lesson that really influenced your professional practices from doing this podcast, this meaningful content mixer.
Yeah, I mean, I would say um it's definitely had me change the way that let me take a step back. It's influenced the way that I work collaboratively, in the sense that I've always been a collaborative worker, but when it comes to, working with these other teams, like I had mentioned, training and education, enablement, customer marketing, all of these teams, it's not just about working together, but really um, leveraging the work that they're creating as well. So it's a little bit of, you don't have to recreate the wheel every time. You don't have to be the hero. Like, content exists, use it, collaborate, work together, lean on each other to inform each other. And that's something that I thought, the podcast really highlighted for me was, okay, you have a template for this. Let me modify it for what I need it for, but I'm still, building off of something that already exists.
It's brilliant and it's so true. And also for us, I mean, we started this podcast almost a year ago. Ever since we had about 25 episodes, and we already kind of being recognized and get mentions from competitors for being in the top of CX and AI podcasts.
That's
And
awesome.
putting aside the recognition and everything that comes along with it, um, it really drives demand in a sense that, because I talked to a lot of startups, founders and VPs, and they all kind of say, yeah, we should start a podcast, we should start a podcast, but they never do.
Yep.
um and well, from one side of it, I understand completely, because as I said, it ain't walk in the park, and it requires a lot of
Mhm.
work and dedication and all of that. But I think that people really still in 2024 don't understand the potential of driving demand, of becoming an industry leader. And as
Mhm.
more, the more niched you are, and the more niche the product that you're selling or promoting is, it's better. um,
Mhm.
and yeah, for some reason, people are still insisting on writing blogs, which I'm not saying is not essential. It is the heart of your website traffic for many brands, right? But still, yeah, podcast, it's probably going to be something that every company, even small lean startups, would do in a year or two from now.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, when you think about it, as much as I love creating content and writing, one of the things I've had to accept is people don't like reading. They don't like reading as much, right? So, we work on making the blog simpler, writing at an 8th grade level, keeping it short and sweet. But, people like to listen, that they'll put on a podcast, they'll listen. And if you want to be a thought leader, then you need to start putting your thoughts out there and doing it in a multimodal way, I guess.
I have to say about your point, you're obviously right, but there's one thing I'm considering of doing for the past few years now, and I've been to several companies, is that I want to add in a feature that allows you to listen to the blog post. I think I've seen
Oh,
that. I've seen that in many websites, to be honest, but I haven't had the chance to really, explore it and kind of deploy it where I'm at right now.
yeah, that's actually a really good idea. Yep, I like that.
Maybe I gave you an idea.
Yeah.
To our listeners. Well, Bonnie, I want to thank you so much for joining us today. It was such a great conversation. For our listeners, if you're looking for more insights on customer experience AI, generative AI, and B2B SaaS, make sure you follow Bonnie Chase on her LinkedIn profile. Bonnie, thanks again for joining us.
Thank you. Really, really enjoyed it.